Information Technology Agency, Ghana. Mr. Richardson has over 16 years of post-qualification experience in IT, telecom management, largely in the public sector. He is currently the head of the Technical Services Department within the National Information Technology Agency, which is the ICT regulator for Ghana and also the agency within government responsible for digitalization. Solomon has served in various capacities within NITA over the years. He holds a BSc in Computer Science and MSc in Telecom Management. Solomon has been key in the development of the e-government infrastructure for the government of Ghana. He led in the design, deployment, and management of the e-government infrastructure, which includes data center, fiber optic network, LTE network, microwave network, LAN network, security operations center, public infrastructure, and a host of other government-shared infrastructure. He also spends a lot of his time sharing Ghana's digital journey experience with other African countries to help them approach their implementation in a more cost-effective and efficient manner. So I request Mr. Solomon to start his talk.
All right. Thank you very much. And it's morning over here, but good afternoon to you all. So I just want to talk on the adoption of public key infrastructure in Ghana. And then at the end of it, we'll talk a bit about what we're also doing on the African continent. So I work for as the MC said, I work for the National ICT Organization. We are the ICT regulator for Ghana. So we regulate ICT in Ghana. So just to give you a bit of a background of the institution I work for, the National ICT Agency was actually formed in 2008 with an act of parliament that established the organization. That was in 2008. And the mandate of the organization per the act is to regulate ICT and to provide related purposes. If I continue, then same in 2008, we also had the Electronic Transaction Act also passed by Parliament. And then the object of this act is to provide for and facilitate electronic communication and related transactions that is in the public interest. So if you look at my institution, to summarize what the institution does, you can say our mandate is in twofold. Our mandate as a regulator and our mandate as CTO for government. When I say CTO, that's the Chief Technology Officer, or you can say organization in this case. So under our mandate as a regulator, we regulate the ICT space in Ghana. We handle consumer protection within the ICT space in Ghana. We set up and enforce standards across the public sector and, of course, the private sector as well. We do periodic audit of IT systems within the public sector, and then registration and certification of players within the ICT space. When I say players, professionals, service providers, consultants, consultancy institutions within the ICT space. Then when you come to the CTO aspect, we lead the national digitalization agenda. We provide technical advisory, consultancy, and support for IT projects across the public sector. We provide technical advisory, consultancy, and support in operations and maintenance across the public sector so far as IT infrastructure and platforms are concerned. We also align technology projects to the digitalization vision and framework, and then implement the policies churned out by the Ministry of Communication. So when the ministry churns out any policy within the ICT, it is our role to ensure the implementation of that policy. And then we also lead the training of ICT professionals within the public sector. So as I mentioned earlier, in 2008, we had the Electronic Transaction Act passed. Within that act, there are specific provisions that seeks to that addresses, gives the legal framework for the adoption and implementation of PKI. So if you look at under that act, we have section 10 to 14, 28 to 45, that provides the legal mandate or the legal framework for the implementation and adoption of PKI in this country. The ETA mandates NITA to establish the certifying authority for Ghana, and then the certifying authority shall establish and manage the country's root certificate authority. So you can see NITA, the organization I work for, as the you can see us as the certifying authority when it comes to PKI. Now let us get to PKI adoption for Ghana. So the law has been implemented. The law was enacted way back in 2008, but it has sat, especially the PKI component, inactive until recently, somewhere in 2021 thereabout, when we now decided that, look, we think it's about time we look at the act, we start implementing the PKI, especially when PKI had become now a global topic that was being adopted by a lot of countries for the purpose of trust, for the purpose of security, and all those sort of things. So we now took it serious to implement it. Because the law had been enacted for so many years, what we decided to do when we were ready to implement PKI was to review the law and see if the law was still fit for purpose. So we did a baseline study of the law. By baseline study, what I mean is that we looked at the law, compared it to other jurisdictions, other countries, to try and understand whether our law was still relevant. Because, technology changes so fast. So we wanted to find out whether our law was still relevant. After the baseline study, we came up with a roadmap of how to now implement based on the baseline studies that we've done. So as part of the baseline study, we realized we needed that PKI root infrastructure. And so in 2021, we set up our root infrastructure and then went for some international recognition. ICAO was the first one that we did, and tried to integrate our country root into the ICAO PKD platform, just for the purpose of signing, for the purpose of recognition in terms of travel document. As at that time, the only travel document that we had that was making use of PKI was our national identification card. So we have built a chip-enabled national identification card, which is digitally signed, and then also using PKI to encrypt the data on the chip. So with that one, we worked with ICAO to integrate so that those, even national ID, the public keys can be made available on the ICAO platform. Then when we did the baseline studies, the gaps that we identified so far as the law was concerned, instead of changing the law altogether, we decided to bridge that gap using regulations. And so we are currently working on some regulations to fill those gaps that we've identified. And let me say that for these blocks that you see over here, anything that you see in green, that means the activity is completed. Anything you see in amber, it is ongoing. And anything you see in red, that means it's yet to start. So currently, the PKI regulation, we have a consultant we are working with to come up with some additional regulations for the PKI space. Luckily for us, last week, we did our National ICT Week celebration, and at the celebration, we officially outdoored the certifying authority for Ghana. So right now, this activity is completed. We now have a certifying authority in place to now start the PKI regulatory framework. Now that certifying authority is completed, has been established, together with the PKI regulation that will come up, we hope to come up with accreditation and licensing and auditing framework for the country. Based on this framework that we'll come up with, we are now going to start accrediting and licensing certificate authorities, certificate service providers, try and license them so that they can start providing those services. Then from there, we'll move to the deployment of PKD, that's the PKI directory. We want to implement that of a national one so that at least all public keys that are issued will be lodged. And per our law, it is compulsory that all certificates that are issued within our jurisdiction will be lodged at the with the certifying authority. So we are creating this directory so that all these keys can be lodged over here. Then, of course, we have some use cases that we are also rolling out. Some we have started, and then there are more that we are trying to do. So with that being said, let me say this you see over here is the architecture that the framework that Ghana has chosen. We have already established the root CA, as I mentioned earlier. Then under the root CA, we are establishing two main CAs, the government CA and the civil CA. So for us, for the government CA is going to address all certificate needs of government. So if you're a government institution, you plug into the GovCA and then you get all your certificate requirement over there. But what we are doing over here is that for sustainability, we have chosen a PPP approach to the whole PKI ecosystem. We've chosen a PPP, so we are partnering with the private sector to really enable our PKI environment. So under the GovCA, the strategy is to deploy what we call a DPI, a digital public infrastructure, under the GovCA. So all common use cases and common applications that we think cut across government, we intend to deploy them as DPI. Take, for example, e-signature, timestamp, digital seal. All these ones, we think that they are services that cut across government. So to save government money, we don't want every government organization to go implementing their own. It will cost us so much. So we'll implement it as a shared service, as a digital public infrastructure for government, where all government agencies will now be onboarded in a multi-tenant platform. And then when you need to sign document, you just get onto the platform, sign in, and then you upload the document, and then you sign. So that is the approach that we are using so that it will be cost effective for government. And then we are currently going through a process to select a private sector vendor who will provide all these services on behalf of government. And the government agencies will actually pay for it, for those services that is being rendered onto them, just so that it becomes more sustainable. So that is the approach that we are using. Then we also understand that some government agencies, by their nature, might want to be set up as a complete sub-CA under the GovCA. So we also allow, depending on your use case, when you apply and your case is reviewed, we might set you up under the government as a GovCA for you to do your own certification activities. Then when you move to the civil CA, over here, we intend to have also some sub-CAs over. Maybe the financial sector can have their own sub-CA, the telecom sector can have their own sub-CA, just like that going. So that is what we have chosen. When it comes to the auditing, for instance, we also using the PPP approach for the auditing as well. So the regulator, being the certifying authority, will not be doing the auditing themselves. We hope that we will accredit some trust auditors, global trust auditors, and then publish their names on the certifying authority's website. Once their names are published over there, every CA or certificate service provider who needs, per the law, to undergo any auditing will have to use one of these auditors. The auditing is done and the report is shared with the certifying authority, and then the necessary action is done. One of the reasons why we have chosen this approach is that we want to make sure that we are working with auditors that are globally recognized. And if they are globally recognized, then that means that your environment, your trust, and your PKI environment will most likely be trusted by other jurisdictions. And that is very important for us. Then, of course, we have our country signer. infrastructure over here that we use to deploy we use to sign documents that are of national or that goes outside our jurisdiction. So this ones I will jump because I think I've spoken about it when I was explaining all that. So currently, the use cases that we have deployed at the national level are these three use cases. We have the national ID, as I mentioned earlier, which has been deployed currently out of 35 million citizens. We have over, let's say, close to 20 million citizens that have been enrolled and issued with a national ID card. Right now, this national ID card is mandatory for most transactions that we do in the country. You cannot get a SIM card if you don't have a national ID. You cannot get a passport if you don't have a national ID. You can't access any service, government service, and even the financial sector. All of it is now mandatory that you need. We have been able to integrate our national ID database with almost all the different sectors, the pension, the financial sector, the insurance sector, educational sector. We've integrated all of it as we talk right now. Then last year in December, we also now rolled out our e-passports. So currently we are now phasing out the barcode passport, and then we're working with the e-passport. So the e-passport was rolled out in December last year, and right now when you apply for a new passport or for renewal, you only get the e-passport. We've also done the e-visa, where we've integrated our PKI infrastructure into the e-visa. So these three use cases currently are live. We've implemented them. Now, going forward, this is where I think it gets very interesting for us as a country. We have these use cases that we are trying to roll out. Some of the use cases: digital signature, timestamp, digital seal, power of attorney, certified bank statement. These are some of the. But then we want that every citizen document, as at now, for us, we are making it mandatory. Issued a policy directive to this effect that every government agency that issues a citizen document, any form of citizen document, like digital ID, like driver's license, land title deed, tax certificate, business registration certificate, educational certificate, and other forms of permit, plus whatever you can think of as a citizen document, it has to be digitally signed. So we have given all of them 1 year. The deadline is end of June 2026. That by end of June 2026, all those government agencies must fully comply, and that all these documents must be digitally signed. Now, when all these documents are digitally signed, then that means that we will have the digital version, the digitally signed versions of them. Then we intend to accredit and license what we call the electronic document wallet providers. Our strategy is that they must be separate from the government agencies. We don't want the government agencies to offer those services. We want third party to offer those services. So third party electronic document wallet providers sit between the citizen businesses and the government agencies that own or host these documents. And then they connect and provide it as a service. So as a citizen, you will be able to select which electronic document wallet provider you want to sign up with. And then you get your document all ported in your wallet. That is what we have chosen to do. So as of now, we are going through a lot of stakeholder engagement. We are going through a lot of stakeholder engagement to sensitize the industry about the new way we want to do things, about what are the things that are mandatory. Our approach in sensitizing the sector is to work with the sector regulators. Example: we sat with our central bank, and then we took them through the whole approach. Then now we are working with the central bank to agree on certain use cases that is going to be mandatory for the financial sector. So Example is that they told us that they now want to use PKI to ensure that every transaction that is completed successfully within any financial institution will be digitally signed. Once it is digitally signed, then that means that the issue of SQL injection and the likes can largely be dealt with, because when you even inject rows into their databases, because that you will not be able to sign them, that means that they will be able to tell which transactions are legitimate and which transactions are not. So we are working with the central bank authority now to identify the use cases that they will make it mandatory for the financial sector. Then now they will also issue a regulatory directive to their regulatees, telling them that on this date, we are all going this way, and so everybody should start preparations to conform. We are working with the pensions authority in a similar approach, the insurance authority in a similar approach, hoping that by when we do that, we will be able to roll out very, very quickly, because every regulator is making sure we work with the regulator to push out the standards through them to make sure that it is done. So that is the approach that we are using in getting those ones done. Currently, as I said, we are doing stakeholder engagement. We identify certain kind of use cases to make it mandatory for each sector, working with the regulators. As a result, we're working with the sectorial regulators for the implementation. So at the national level, this is where we are right now. This is what we are trying to do. Now, when we move from the national level to the continental, we say that currently PKI adoption on the African continent is very, very, very low. Most countries on the continent do not have the necessary framework and infrastructure to roll out PKI. The reasons include lack of technical expertise, funding, and then enabling environment. Some countries do not even have the law that can support the rollout of PKI use cases in their country. So these are some of the challenges that we are having. Participation of Africans at the global or international level with respect to PKI is also not encouraging at all. When you go for any of these, you find out that the African countries are just not present. Of course, if you haven't deployed PKI at that scale in your country, if you are not using it on your digital platform, then you have no business even showing up at the international level for whatever reason it is. So this puts the digital ecosystem in Africa as a whole at a greater risk, as the ecosystem, that is Africa's digital ecosystem, will largely not be trusted by other jurisdictions. So this is the situation that Africa finds itself in right now. So as a result, we have the Africa PKI Consortium. A few countries like Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, I think Cameroon, somewhere in 2024, came together and decided to form the Africa PKI Consortium. I think our inspiration was from the Asia PKI Consortium. So we decided to have a similar thing in Africa. And then I think last week we had our first annual general meeting of the Africa PKI Consortium in Accra. I hosted the Africa PKI Consortium from the 26th and 27th. So I can gladly say that now Africa PKI Consortium has been born. And then we had our first conference just last week, where we had about 10 African countries participating for a start. So we think that if we have 10 African countries participating, this looks very, very encouraging. And we hope over the next year to court the rest of the African countries to join, and also to have the necessary affiliations on the African continent and at the global level as well. Now, why are we forming the Africa PKI Consortium? The main reason is for a continental push for secure digital transaction and trusted identities, need for cross-border interoperability and mutual recognition, shared capacity building, and common standards and harmonize PKI. Hello. We want to promote PKI standards and best practices. We want to facilitate and harmonize PKI frameworks in Africa. We want to support capacity building and awareness. We want to advocate enabling policies and regulation, and then, of course, foster innovation across sectors. Then the core objective is similar to what I said earlier: standardize and harmonize harmonization, global best practices. For interoperability, we want to consider the issue of cross-border recognition of certificate and trust services. Capacity building is very big on our core objective, because that is what is hampering the adoption of PKI from the latest studies that we've done. Of course, we also want to do policy advocacy, PKI-friendly regulations and compliance framework, and industry-focused regulation to enable adoption and use of the PKI. Then, of course, we need to look at research and innovation, where we look at blockchain, PKI, post-quantum, which has become a big issue right now when you talk about PKI, and then public awareness across stakeholders. So this is just a quick brief of what is happening here in my country, Ghana, and then on the African continent, trying to get PKI adopted into our national architectures and then used in all sectors of the economy. Thank you very much.